Welcome, everybody. My name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Thank you, everybody, for joining the Trend podcast again. It's great to have you listening. I know we got some new listeners out there. I've actually been talking to some of the listeners. And in a subsequent episode, I'm going to bring up some of the things that the listeners are bringing up to me that they'd like to have a little bit clarified and some in-depth detail about. So that'll be in a subsequent episode. But today's the episode is going to be with our friend, Jim Miller. Jim Miller is a local author, military veteran. Thanks for your service, Jim, in Vietnam.
You're welcome.
As well as him writing numerous novels. Jim, what's the count up to now?
44.
44 books that he's written. We're going to talk about that in depth today. He's written a couple more books since our last broadcast, and one's going to be very particular to us. So Jim Miller is coming to us as a guest today. And then, as usual, as our frequent guest, we have Tony Piwowarcyk. Just so you know, it's Piwowarcyk. I'm probably the only person on earth that can spell it. And it's not P-War, it's Piwowarcyk. Jim Miller's the only one that pronounces his name correct, Piwowarcyk, not just Piwowarcyk.
I can spell it too, by the way.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate
that. He types
it
really fast.
Yeah.
He types it a lot.
Because Tony's been in a lot of Jim's books, and so we'll talk about that too. So, yeah. Hey, Jim, I want to thank you for joining us. Last time when we left, we weren't able to get the camera working. This time we want to make sure we have a nice camera view, specifically talking about all the books that you've written and all the published novels that you have. This will be a big part of our discussion today. Tony has probably read, Tony, have you read all the books or what?
Yes, I have.
So
I'm fortunate to have read them all and honored.
I can see where they're going. It's only 5 minutes in and we're already having a good time. So I do have, I think, 3 of Jim's books. I have read them before. We're going to talk a little bit about his character development in some of the previous books that he's written. But we're going to talk about a specific book today that's in front of me here. It's called Homecoming Dance. Last time when Jim was on the podcast, we asked Jim if he would be willing to do a book regarding the real life people behind Trend Media LLC. Georgia, that's for you, the LLC part, just to let you know. So Jim actually was, I'd say, excited to do a book about us. So the book he wrote, its name is Homecoming Dance. And as part of the book he wrote, we're going to have Tony in the book. Tony affectionately goes by the name of Igloo. It's actually on his license plate, so Igloo. I'm in the book, and Tony and I are partners as homicide detectives. And then we have Sarah Streifler and Allie Vogt in the book. And much to their, specifically Allie was dismayed when she found out she was a high school student.
Well, she's only a high school student to begin with.
Exactly. And she didn't realize that at first, okay? So
yeah, I mean, then she moved up in the world.
Exactly right.
That's exactly right.
So I look at Allie. You and Sarah need to realize when books are written, okay, while they are based on true characters, we have a little bit of a variance in how we present this. So anyways, so while you are younger in the first part of the book as high school students, you do crawl out of a window in the early part of the book, right? Both you and Sarah do. And you move on a little bit more in your, I guess, quest, right? To find out what
unfortunately, you age like we have.
Yes, I still got brown hair. Allie, you're gray. So anyways, we have to go around that. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great to have you here, Jim. Won't be the last time either.
Good. And by my sincere hope is that having my ugly mug on a video doesn't disturb small children. But anyway, this is, like I said, I was up real late last night working on this because this is something different than we did the last time. It's been a long time ago. I don't remember what we did last time or what I had for breakfast. So, but like what Gary said is that he asked me to do this book, and you have to kind of understand the way I write. I don't write to spec. I don't write to write this book and like that. I don't know how to do that, or I don't like to do it. This book, actually, this one set a record just for you guys. I'm looking at you right now. Is the reality is it took me longer to write this book than any other book that I've ever written. Normally, murder mysteries, which is what this is, 10, 12 days for the first draft, pretty much tops. This was more along the lines of almost 4 months.
Wow.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. Is that the primary reason is that I didn't know where I was going, because quite frankly, I don't know anything about podcasts other than what I'm looking at in here. So it was, and I know these guys, and the idea of writing something that, was gonna, I don't know, I don't want to say measure up, but I mean, I also don't want to write some, you know, some terrible thing that everybody would go, that's awful. Why did you do this? So there was a lot of fits and starts, lots and lots of fits and starts. I mean, I have a file on my computer that says outtakes, and this particular book had 7 prologue and first 3 or 4 chapters outtakes, at least 7 of them, where I started the story and didn't like it. And I'd go back and then I'd start again and I didn't like it. And I did that 5 or 6 times. I literally did. And then once I got kind of started on the idea that I liked, off we went. But it had to be, because it is a murder mystery, there had to be a murder but to actually weave in the podcast part, that took a while. I mean, it really did. I had to kind of weasel my way into it. Okay. So, but what I want to talk about today is some specifics. It's going to be specifics about this book. It's going to be specifics about some other things. I have notes.
But, you know, when you did writing this book, you did follow a timeline that corresponds a lot to Gary and my timeline.
Pretty much.
In life and retirement and projects that were taken on after retirement.
Well, that's what made it easy. I mean, that part of it was easy, just simply because I know you guys well enough. I know your background. And to be able to actually make that so that it sounds like, you know, that you know kind of what you're talking about. That part was the easy part, but the actual making a story and how am I going to get a podcast into a murder mystery? Well, it worked out. I mean, it worked out. When you read it, you'll see. But the deal of it is what I do when I want to talk to you guys about, because we didn't talk about it last time, and I think this is important, is that there's, going back to what I said to begin with, there's anytime you ever take a creative writing course, regardless of where you take it, there's a couple of things that you're always going to hear from a teacher or professor, whatever. And the first thing is that writers write. Okay. You just write. You have to write. And the other thing is you write what you know. Okay. Which put me in something of a quandary about a podcast because I don't know anything about them.
Well, you were on a podcast. At least.
Well, I was on a podcast, and that, you know, but that was just me talking and not looking at you guys. But anyway, but here's the deal. The deal is that this is a murder mystery. And in murder mysteries, there's 3 ways. I'm pointing at the camera now so they can see. There are 3 ways to write a murder mystery, okay? Especially one that was going to be difficult like this one is. And one is God's view, okay? And what God's view is that nobody knows who did it. Nobody does. And you don't learn until the thing gets solved at the end. That's God's view. There's another view. One is the reader's view. And we're in the prologue or whatever, that's number 2. The reader is let in immediately as to what happened and who did it, okay? And then the third one is that the cops know, or the cops figure it out soon or early, but can't prove it or whatever. But the reader doesn't know. And so the reader is left in the dark pretty much. So those are the 3 ways. I kind of like to mix those up. I do. And I did that in this book too. I mean, I've written a lot of them, so I've got a little bit of experience at it. So anyway, then there's another thing in here. And if anybody who took Latin in high school, you would perhaps know this term. It is called Deus ex machina or machina, whatever. That's Latin. What it means is the machinery of the gods, right? And in literature, like in movies or whatever, what a machinery of the gods is kind of a cheap way of getting somewhere. One would be, it's kind of like the quick look over there thing, you know?
Shiny object.
Yeah, the shiny object butterfly goes through and stuff like that. And that is, you know, like that can get you somewhere. The other really cheesy one would be like, Gary was the investigator. He fell out of bed and he landed on a note that said, "My name is Joe and I killed a person. You can catch me at 708 Ivy Street. I'll be there at 8 o'clock." Okay. You do it that way too. That would be a machinery of the gods because that would get you to a place.
Jim, I wish I solved them that easy. I don't interrupt you, but
no, that's absolutely correct. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That is a really cheesy way of doing it, and it does happen that way. There are some people who are real lazy, and they will do something like that. They'll get stuck somewhere in a story,
like chapter 16.
Like chapter 16, absolutely. That's an entire novel. It's not a murder mystery. It's an entire novel. It's chapter 16 because I got stuck in chapter 16 one time and could not get out of it. So I wrote a book about it. But anyway, okay, so those are a couple of things that when you read murder mysteries that I think it's interesting to know. Okay, especially if you're kind of an avid reader, because then you can put yourself in one of those categories. Okay, I mean, if you don't like the God way of doing it and stuff like that, you read 6 pages. Well, I'm not doing that, and you throw it away. But it does help. The other thing is that in murder mysteries, you have to, even if it is the God view, you have to keep people interested. So if you turn to your book, if you have it, and go to page 33 and 34, what you'll see is that I've already gone through the prologue. The murder has happened. These 2 girls have just skinnied out the back window and like that. But in the end of chapter, page 33 and the end of page 34, you'll find that there's a character that nobody knows anything about. He's a guy who's sitting in the dark on a porch, just essentially blocks away from where the murder happened. And that's a tease. And the tease simply says, there's a bunch of people up there wondering what was going on. That didn't necessarily, or that didn't matter to this guy, which is the allusion, of course, to the fact that this person knew what had happened up there. Didn't say it, but it's a tease. All right, that's the way it goes. And then the rest of it is you have to do character development. Okay, you have to be able to write characters that people. Oh, sorry, that that people are going to want to relate to. Okay, the girls, for instance, because I don't really know much about Allie and Sarah. I don't, other than what we've been before. They had to have a place in the story, and it was very, very convenient because I also knew that these guys were like interns, right? Isn't that correct?
Yep.
In one of your other business, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's where I started.
So anyway, so I was able to do that. I could start you guys out as teenagers, right? And be an integral part of the story, and then move you along into the thing. And that was where the dovetail for the podcast came in, because you went from being interns doing something, because he has an idea every 20 seconds, to, having the idea of, well, why don't we do podcasts and stuff? And there's actually a couple of examples in the book of how you did one that has absolutely nothing to do with the book, but it has, like it's just podcast stuff. Okay. I think AOC was one of them, wasn't it? Something like that.
You didn't name, but it was
I never do.
It was a congressman.
It was
a congressperson,
by the way.
Congressperson from Flushing, New York. I mean,
who had rather liberal views.
Rather liberal. Well, which is a good way to not get sued, because, well, the thing is it's not liable and it's not slander if it's true. Okay. And I never say, well, sometimes I do. You tend not to say things that aren't true. So anyway, that's how this got started. I know I just banged on that thing that you're going to have to edit out. I apologize.
Jim, I am watching all your banging, by the way. That's like 12.
I did bang.
I banged. It's 12.
That's 12. Sorry. So anyway.
And back to AOC is my favorite quote. And you've given me many quotes in other books, but on this one, after the interview where she says her piece and walks out, I say, Jesus, I didn't think a room this small could hold that much entitled bullshit.
Well, that's true. I mean, you can say that's a really cool part. But anyway, that was kind of like, it was that one, and there was some other person too, I think, but I don't remember. The reality is that was the lead in to the stuff that I don't know. Okay. Now, I've watched some Joe Rogan and some Sean, I forget what Sean's last name, the Navy SEAL. I've watched some of those, and Dave Smith, I've watched some of those, and those are pretty cool. And so, I mean, I kind of get the idea of the genre of podcasts. I do. I kind of get it. But I'm not an expert at it by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have any investment in it personally. So that was the way I got to Gary's request of writing a book about guys and folks and a podcast. And that's the way we did it. So the deal is that the way this thing got going, and I don't do it. Well, maybe I do it on purpose.
Are we going to suggest people read this before they listen to the whole interview?
Yes, I do. Yeah, you do, because there's going to be a lot of
spoil things.
A lot of spoiler alerts coming up here, because you can't understand the way the book was written or why it was written or how it was written without me telling you some certain things. Okay, for instance, there was early in book, and this is something that aggravated Gary.
Yes.
As an investigator.
I'm looking it up right now.
They looked it up right there, because the thing is that the murder scene itself was a basketball court. Okay. It was a basketball court, and whoever the guy, we're assuming it was a guy. I wrote a book where a girl actually did this too, which was really gross. The perpetrator. Okay. The deal was that many times, and you guys can correct me when I go off base here, but the reality is there's at a crime scene. Okay. The purpose of the crime scene technicians and so forth and so on is to document the scene, taking pictures, scarfing up anything that might be part and parcel to the act and stuff. And in some cases, in some murders, and these guys can tell you, of course, is that you have a murder, you have a dead person, but that's all you got. Okay, that's not the case in this story. Okay, it's not the case. The murder weapon was still around this girl's neck. Okay, and the implement that this really demented person
Thanks
used.
for saying implement, because we can't give it away too much. And
No, you
ties
don't.
in what I'm gonna
But
bring up,
this implement was actually left at the scene. However, there was nothing that was identifiable. Okay, there was no DNA left behind, even though there was a lot of blood that was involved. But there was no ostensible fingerprints. You get into a little bit later in a second. That's where the girls come in. But there was one thing that happened, because the crime scene folks are the ones who go, they look at the body, and then the ME comes in and they do the liver test, the liver temperature to see how long the person's been dead, yada, yada, yada. But they do a number of things. They scrape like fingernail beds and stuff like that for defensive wound, DNA, stuff like that. Okay. But the thing that bugged Gary is because, remember, the scene itself was pristine. I mean, it really was. There was nothing there to be collected other than just like detritus and just junk and stuff like that, which more than likely had absolutely nothing to do with the fact, right? Okay. So tell them what bothered you.
Well, here, that's what I'm looking over. I'm not even gonna. I was going to give the page number. I'm not going to do that right now. In my years of being a true life homicide detective, I worked a number of cases. And there's one particular case that still bothers me to this day. And it was a very brutal case, one of the most sadistic cases I've worked. And I walked up to Jimmy when the book was done, because I read this, and I says, "Did you read my cases?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I says, "The description of the scene is exactly like one of the cases that I worked." Is that not correct, Allie? Allie's seen this case, because we do this in some of our teachings that we have.
And I just have this disgusting, demented mind when it comes to inventing murder.
So you're the person.
So tell him what the thing bothered you.
How did he know that? How did Jim know the description of that scene was tied in to a real case I worked on? He've never talked to him about it. I don't share it with anybody. I only talk about this case during some of the training programs I do. And I looked at him, and I'm trying to figure him out, thinking, how did he describe this scene knowing that I've been there? I don't want to give the scene away, because they're going to have to read it. It's an early part of the book, by the way, within the first several pages.
If you don't do it, I'm going to.
Yeah, well, we can't give that away too much. But
I won't, I promise, but I am going to give this.
So I give everything away.
Oh, no.
That's why I told people to read the book.
Yeah, but the people just listen to the podcast for the first time. So anyways, I was confused about how Jimmy knew about the scene. Even though the scene in real life was outside, the manner and cause of death was pretty similar. So Jim, let's dig into that a little bit.
So here's the deal. The deal is like this, is that I actually wrote a matter of fact, the very first murder mystery I ever wrote, the Nightingale Murders. I don't think it's back there. It might be, it should be. But anyway, the deal is that there was an actual case, it was in Florida, where something, that transpired. Not so much the ligature, but the other disgusting stuff.
Yes.
That actually happened. Okay.
The implement.
The implement was used. It was used by the wife of a police officer who was messing around on his wife. She used the implement on this guy's girlfriend and did a hell of a job. Anyway, but now Gary hasn't been able to tell you this, or doesn't want to, or whatever, but I'm going to. And I'm going to do it as obliquely as I can. There was something missing. Now, remember I said a second ago, the whole deal about defensive wounds, right? Defensive wounds where this girl is being strangled with a electrical cord, okay? And she's fighting for her life, all right? And girls, people in general, but especially girls do not go well to, the good night. They just don't. Many, many times you'll see, and if you read in the book, there'll be 2 or 3 times, where what winds up happening is they actually do some pretty serious damage to the person who's trying to kill them, and eventually who don't. So one of the things that you'll look at, of course, is that they scrape fingernails to see if they pulled out some skin, which would be DNA, okay? What really bothered Tony was because the thing was so that the scene was so clean, right? And it's in the first few pages, so don't worry about it. The girl was missing 3 fingernails, right? It's 3 fingernails?
Yep.
Was missing 3 fingernails, I think on her right hand. They looked everywhere. Couldn't find the fingernails. Where the hell are the fingernails? How could it be that there's a crime scene that's this pristine, okay? But yet something as significant as that, you would think, maybe somebody stepped on them and they're in the bottom of their shoes or whatever. But the reality is they went down all those roads and no one ever found the thing. That's called a mechanism. Okay. I thought that one up at the beginning of the story because you need, there's a thing in literature and in movies and stuff like that. It's the shotgun over the mantelpiece. Okay. And what that means is that if in the story or if in the movie, if they show you in kind of an ambient fashion, a shotgun over the mantelpiece, if they do it on purpose to either write about it or show it, it means something. If you're going to do that, if you're going to show the shotgun, then you have to use it somewhere in the story. Those are the rules. So that was one of those mechanisms. Those fingernails were one of those mechanisms. Okay. Cops don't know it. It just bugs the heck out of Gary because it doesn't fit. And that's the thing with homicide detectives is that the things that bother them most are the ones that they just don't fit. They don't make sense. I'm writing a book right now. Will just drive you absolutely wild. So this is something, it's kind of, well, gives them someplace to go, but they don't have anywhere to go. Okay. They don't have anywhere to go. Now you remember this was in a high school, all right? Thousands or hundreds and hundreds of kids and staff. And they did, and you'll read it way, way late in the book, the pedantic way that these two, plus another set of detectives after these guys retire and go into the podcast business, the pedantic way that they went about the investigation. Okay. Hundreds and hundreds of interviews, hundreds of interviews. And they were getting nowhere. They were getting absolutely nowhere. There were no clues or no hints. There were no anything until a lady who lives on the third floor across the street on Osceola Avenue saw these two leave the bushes at.
He's talking about Sarah and Allie, who are at work on our board today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm kind of not very visual.
He's seeing people that really aren't there.
But anyway, but the deal of it is that there was nothing for Gary and Igloo to hang their hat on investigation-wise to solve this crime until this lady saw Allie and Sarah come out from behind these bushes. Why did they do that? They did it because they caught the bus down on Virginia Avenue. And so that would cut like 2 blocks off of their walk down to the bus stop and stuff. If they went out this janitor's closet, opened the window, which was covered by these bushes. All right. So we got, all right. So that's somebody to talk to. That's somebody for these guys to talk to. And then there's another guy who was out walking his dog. And one of the uniforms, who was out canvassing the area. Did you see anything? Blah, 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 blah. The guy with the dogs saw some guy wearing a green hoodie come out through the bushes. Well, if you look at the bushes, you can't see the window. Okay. The window is hidden behind the bushes. Cop goes over there, looks back there. Holy cow, we got footprints in the soft dirt outside the window. Let's talk to Gary and Igloo. Maybe this is something they want to look at.
Could it be a clue?
But could it be a clue? Well, you got to get to clues, okay? Because remember, this is fiction. You're making this stuff up.
No. It looks like you read my report with the description of the scene. So.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm stealing stuff from him, but that's
okay. Thank you. He doesn't know it, but he stole my stuff.
That's really not true. But anyway, but that's not important. It is. It's really pretty cool that the coincidence was that close. But anyway, now they do have a clue. And why do they have a clue? Is because when they talked to the girls said, yeah, we go out there and stuff like that. And they were not necessarily people of interest. These were high school girls. And the other thing, the timeline didn't fit and some other stuff. But when they were leaving this time, okay, the window that they go out, which they always lift up, go out, shut down.
It's a secret way they leave out of the high school without people knowing about it.
That's exactly right.
So that's what they do.
So that's what they did to go catch the bus. They wanted to save some walking time. So anyway, they go back in. The crime scene guys come back because they're already gone. They come back and they dust down this room, which theretofore had absolutely nothing to do with the crime scene, nothing whatsoever. Well, they find Allie and Sarah's fingerprints on the thing because they'd been doing it for 6 or 7 months, But they also find another simple one. Actually, it was also just a partial fingerprint that had some kind of.
I like how you said partial.
Partial. Sorry.
Okay.
So I've been hanging around you too much. That has something distinctive in it. It had a scar and it was a thumbprint, but it was only a partial one, which is really kind of odd. But anyway, it was something that they didn't have before. Was it the janitors? No, they had to rule all that stuff out. And they had to rule out a whole bunch of other people. Who does this thing belong to? They ran it through the database. I don't remember the letters that
It's called APHIS.
APHIS.
Automated fingerprint identification system, Jim.
They went through that. But the thing you have to understand about that kind of thing is that this is one very partial fingerprint in the absolute tsunami of fingerprints that the FBI and all these other databases get all the time. And then there's one other thing, and that has to do with murder mysteries, and it's very, very convenient for someone like me who's writing about them and making stuff up, is this isn't the only murder that this partnership or all the other partners in the homicide table are working, okay? 7 weeks have gone by, right? And they got nothing except this fingerprint, and they haven't heard anything about the fingerprint yet. The captain wants it to go to the cold case file, and so forth and so on. So now we get into the point where serendipity has to take place, okay? Because somehow or another, they have to get a suspect. They have to. Because otherwise, murder mysteries kind of suck if you don't have somebody who did it.
You got nowhere to go. Why am I going to keep reading?
So anyway, they eventually get back, weeks later, a hit on this partial thumbprint. It came from the federal government. It came from the Department of the Navy. And it came back with a name. Okay? We need to talk about that later on because it's a huge hole in the story that I found last night, which I'd never thought before. But anyway, it comes back, but it comes back with a name. The name is Babcock. Okay? Babcock means nothing to any of these guys.
Billy
Babcock. William something Babcock.
William Babcock.
Adley, I think, whatever. But the point is that now they have this guy, this Babcock. Of course, they go back and they have to do all the other due diligence about, does this guy work for the high school? Is he somehow connected to the high school? And why would he be going out or coming in this particular window? It's a clue. It's a clue. But it didn't go anywhere. It literally doesn't go anywhere. And without beating the character to death, Babcock's a real person. Okay, I am not gonna do the character sketch for you. I'll let you read it on your own. But the deal of it is that let's say that he has issues. Okay, drug, alcohol, and he was wounded in the war, and so forth. We'll leave that at that. But even though that the cops have this fingerprint and this name that goes with the fingerprint, they don't have the guy, whoever this Babcock character is. They don't have that to compare it to. And then serendipity steps in.
Oh, that's the name of an ice cream place we take the interns to down in the city after we have
serendipity. The guy essentially falls into their lap. Okay, I won't get into how it happened because that's kind of long and drawn out. But he falls into their lap. And this is where the story kind of goes off the deep end, because I am absolutely fascinated by, have written quite a bit about total amnesia. Okay, total amnesia is a thing. If you ever seen the movie The Vow with Amy McAdams or Sarah McAdams, whatever her name is, she lost her memory after a traumatic effect from an automobile accident. I wrote a book a long time ago. Matter of fact, it was my second book. And it was about a guy who lost his memory completely, didn't know who he was from point X on. Okay. And that always fascinated me. But this story is another step from there. This guy was wounded, and with drugs and alcohol, he doesn't have memory, period. He can't remember things that aren't absolutely in the present right there. So when the cops go to him, okay, and they want to talk to him because his fingerprint was at the murder scene, he doesn't remember. Matter of fact, he doesn't remember anything. He has to be reminded of what his name is all the time. So the case goes on, and I'm not going to get into that again because you have people who haven't read the story. But the point of it is the case goes on, because now they have somewhere to go. They've gotten some momentum, and they have some place to go with it. They go there, and lo and behold, they find some pretty interesting stuff, and I'll leave that alone too. But then this is where the problem with the story came in and why it took so long to write, because this was a terrible crime, okay? And you'll find out when you read it that it's made even more heinous based on who this guy is and who the victim is. I'll leave it at that. But the point of it is that he's indicted, okay? And he's taken to trial. There's a big, long thing in there about trials. I also love writing about trials. But he doesn't have a defense, does he? And I did a lot of research on that, because the thing that is, there is a defense, an amnesia defense. There is one. But the success of the defense is sketchy at best, okay? Maybe 1 out of 10 or whatever. You can look that up. So, I mean, the guy had a lawyer. The lawyer did his best, objected to everything that he could, tried to keep certain evidence out of the record and stuff like that. But it boiled down to the fact that there was this crime, okay, and all of the, it's not prima facie evidence, but all of the circumstantial evidence, right, stuff that they found and so forth, is, points in one direction, doesn't point anywhere else. I mean, it's the stuff that is the evidence that they're going to use against him in trial. It's pretty compelling. Okay, even though it's
there are no other viable suspects
with this
evidence.
There are no other viable suspects, and that you get into that a little bit too. So here's the problem. And this is why this book took so long, is that the guy gets convicted. Okay, all right. The jury had a bunch of mothers on it, and they would have just as soon skinned this guy alive. But he gets convicted, and the DA had gone for the max, right? And so he goes to.
It was a capital crime.
It was a capital crime, so he went to death row. Okay, he's in a state prison in death row waiting, and he's there for, I forget, 7 years, I think. So he's there for a long time, because for a capital crime that ends up in a I'm preaching to the choir here. There is a mandatory appeals process. That's just the way the law works.
Correct.
So this goes on for about 7 years. The guy still doesn't remember. He actually writes his lawyer a letter and tells him to stop the appeals because, well, he doesn't remember and he's not going to. But if he did do what they said he did, then he deserves what he's going to get. What do you do now? You've all seen the movies, okay? Do you execute this guy?
This is your dilemma.
This is my dilemma. Writing the book. Do you execute this guy? Because if you do, where's the story go from there? Or is this one of those things where the Supreme Court or the governor, the guy's walking down the hallway to the place where he's going to be executed, and all of a sudden the phone rings, right? You've heard that and you've seen that kind of stuff before. So I didn't know which way to go. I just didn't know which way to go. I really didn't.
Well, don't give it up all the things.
I won't give it up. But I went and I talked to my son, and he gets credits in here, and I went to talk to my wife. I talked to some people in Italy, talked to some people in England and in France, and just ran that scenario by them.
And you were writing this book while you're on vacation with your son in
Europe. Yes, I was, which is a serendipity all by itself. But the point was, the overwhelming majority of people went a particular way. Okay. And then once it went that way, and I'm not going to tell you which way because you got to read it. Once it went that way, then the rest of the story kind of tells itself. Okay. Right. And again, I could tell you right now, but then again, that would spoil the whole book. But it's.
You're not going to tell him the butler did it?
No, the butler. Yeah. Or maybe, what's his name? Major Plum or
Professor Plum, Colonel Mustard.
Yeah.
Scarlet. Okay,
I knew he'd know. Yeah. But anyway, so the deal of it is that this is a different kind of book because of the circumstance that surround this guy. Okay. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Does he not remember? Because remember, there's 3 or 4 different criteria. Oh, that's plural. Criteria for determining total amnesia. The last, which is a viable reason, malingering. Okay, is that people, that's one of the reasons why that defense doesn't work very well, because even the defense psychiatrist in cross-examination is going to have to admit that malingering is one of the things.
Which is not a term you hear every day.
No, it's not. I mean, but the thing is you got a guy that says, well, I don't remember. That's my only defense. That's all I can say is I just don't remember. I don't know if I did it. I don't know if I didn't do it, but I don't remember. But if you ever saw the movie Richard Gere, Edward Norton Jr., Fatal something. But anyway, that's kind of a riff on that, okay, of someone who's trying to play the system, right? That they really go through the motions. It was like one of those, I think it was Genovese, one of the mob guys in New York City, convinced people that he was crazy, walked around in his pajamas all the time and convinced people that he was crazy so that he wasn't going to get sent to jail. So that there's a precedent for this malingering part of it. So these are the kind of things that a jury has to look at, right? And say, is this guy, how do you not have a memory? First of all, that is such an outlier in life. I mean, everybody has a memory, even a little bit. And if you look at the other things that we talked about, there are memories that stop at a certain point, right? But they pick up and you start to live the rest of your life, and you remember everything from point X. This guy doesn't have a point X. He doesn't have a point Y. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't remember anything. You have to decide whether he's malingering or not. You do. That's part of the fun of the story. But then the whole, how we doing time-wise?
I'm going to interrupt you here in just a second. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Anyway.
I'm kind of close to finishing.
Only one thought, right?
A multiple in one sentence.
But it is the way that the ladies over here, the way that they manipulated the podcast system was one of the primary ways of solution. Okay. All right. That's it.
Let me talk a little bit about this. We're running, let's say, we want to make sure we clear everything up. You're running a little bit short of time, but I want to talk about some things regarding the book and what Jim talked about that are actually real life regarding homicide and police investigations. All right, let's talk specifically about homicides. Go into a scene, you go to a crime scene, a murder scene, and you look around and you assess, you look, and you try to put your place to where the victim was and what the suspect was doing. All right, and so I did that when I read the book, first of all, Jim. And initially, when you work a scene, you don't know what happened. So you have to go by what is the victim telling you. And that's going to tie into our next episode about a little bit about some of my cases. And one more realistic thing you mentioned, Jim. People ask me, with all the blood, the gore, and the trauma I saw in my career, did I ever have nightmares over what I saw of blood and trauma? And honestly, I haven't. Let me explain what happened there. Did I have sleepless nights, Jim? I cannot tell you the sleepless nights I had. Tony, you've had sleepless nights in your career, right? With ATF and but what was the sleepless nights about? Mine, I'd lay there at night saying, what am I missing? What am I not seeing in this case? What can the victim, the scene, or people tell me that I'm not seeing? So I lay there awake all night long thinking. I'd lose sleep. I'd get up. And
so I kept the notepad.
Yeah,
by the bed.
Well, I mean, the thing of it is too. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the thing of it is too, and that's what I tried to do with you folks, with you as investigators, is that because Tony actually has a personal relationship with the victim, okay, and that makes it hard. That makes it because policemen are humans to begin with, okay, but there has to be a disconnect between the personal side of the things that you're seeing, like you're talking about staying awake, and the professional side of you got to get justice for the person who was murdered.
Yep, the justice and the truth. So like Jim said, I'd lay there awake doing this and just thinking about the case, all right? Well, here's what happens then. After 2 or 3 days go by, you still have a good contingent of people helping you. At day 3 and 4 comes up what happens. The people that were helping you, you might have 10 or 15 people. Now they're doing other cases. They're going slowly back to their own cases. In the meantime, you'll have another murder come up, another homicide, another suicide, another death, another accidental death, all right? And then people start slowly taking back their own assignments. And eventually you're there by yourself or you're there with your partner, nobody else helping you. You're on your own. And then in the meantime, what happens is I get another case to work, or Eagle gets another case while we're still got this one in our minds. Our minds get so jumbled sometimes about the focus on cases. And did I consider cases more serious than others? I don't say more serious. How about determination? I was more determined. And if I had a lead or a clue, I wanted to focus on that case. So people start leaving you when you're trying to work a case, working their own cases, or you got new cases coming in. If I'm got a lead, I'm going to go on this murder case, such as homecoming dance, but then I got a suicide to go on. And the suicide turns into a 2-day investigation I'm doing. And that is a realistic part. One last thing, Jim, about something you mentioned. There's going to be a TV episode that I'm going to be on that was filmed out of a production company out of Canada. And it's going to be in the UK and the United States, I think on Discovery Channel in the United States. And it's a case I worked. And believe it or not, the suspect ended up having amnesia. No lie. And I'm going to get you a little bit involved in this case because it's actually open now. And it's a closed case. It's already went to trial. Everything's done with it. And the suspect confesses to me. And Jim, I'll even let you see the interrogation. Sure. And when he confesses. He says that he was in there with the victim and then something happened. Next thing he remembers, he's out in the hallway with blood all over his hands.
Right.
And I said, what happened? He goes, I don't remember. All I know is seeing blood. There's blood everywhere. I says, well, what happened in there? I don't know. And again, do I believe him or not? And I interrogated him for hours. I think it turned out to be like a 14-hour interrogation on this case. Again, this is going to be a TV episode on this one. It's a very involved case. And did he really have amnesia, Jim? I want you to look at the interrogation, all right? I want you to read what I read because the report's been released out of a Sunshine. I want you to look, all right?
Sure.
And tell me, do you think it happened? And as soon as you mentioned that, and as soon as I started, find out that part of the book, is that what happens to suspects?
Well, I mean, the thing is that having been in the medical business for a long time, traumatic amnesia is a thing. I mean, it's not the least. I mean, it's like,
and it's not traumatic amnesia by a physical injury to the head or like a physical injury.
That's not what I mean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but that means it's not that.
But no, you're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is that there's a whole bunch of different ways of trauma, like ADHD, for instance, or not ADHD, whatever, because she's giving us the sign back there. The reality is that something as traumatic as actually having committed a murder or come upon a murder and stuff like that can actually trigger total amnesia.
Sure, but I'm saying a traumatic injury to oneself versus a traumatic event. There's a difference between an event and an injury somebody sustained.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was.
No, absolutely. That's exactly
like a bullet to the head that affects the brain and is still lodged in the brain.
Yeah, right.
So again, I want Jim to look at this case I worked. Again, I'll give a little more details on this episode. It's going to be released on June 29th, if I'm not mistaken, the episode. And it details with the amnesia part and also the description of the victim in this case matches the case that I worked. And we've been talking to Jim Miller, a local author, and the book is Homecoming Dance. We've been here with Tony Igloo Piwowarcyzk. And Tony, again, great friend of mine and Jim's. And Tony has been with us a long time, both with Trend Media, LLC, that's for George's benefit, as well as Vista Law Enforcement Training Consulting, LLC. Behind us, if we can get a view of that, we have numerous books that Jim wrote.
Remember, the count is 44 books.
44 books. And so I'm sure you can see them on the camera there, the books Jim wrote. Give us just two quick memorable books that you think of that have stuck in your mind. I have cases stuck in my mind. Tony does. What about a book that's stuck in your mind?
The very first one, The Nightingale Murders, is about a friend of mine who actually got murdered. I mean, it was a story that, it's fiction, but it's a story that was actually taken from reality. This really good friend of mine.
And she was helping the young person want to be a
young cop.
Yep, young cop.
Wanted to be that one was a big deal. That one was a very, very, very big deal. And then another one, which is not a murder mystery. As a matter of fact, I just finished it. It's called Rutger and Compton. And it's a very personal story. It's about my father and 3 of my uncles. And that, for a lot of personal reasons, that was a big deal to write, and I did. And I enjoyed it. But I mean, the Nightingale Murders is the one that spawned this entire series. It was the very first one, and I had never written one before.
Yeah, you've got 19 books regarding some affiliation
Spin-off of that,
yeah. The one that I'm writing right now would be number 20.
And all your books, based in St. Louis, occur around St. Louis.
Yep.
Include people that you've met.
Sure.
And you include their real names with their permission.
Yep.
And place them as various characters in your books.
Yeah, like crazy old Joe Hickey, the bomb dude. What a knucklehead. I love him to death, though.
Well, one good thing about the book here is this is real life locations in St. Louis. We talk about Barnes Hospital, talk about different high schools and neighborhoods that Jim's familiar with. And those of you that are from St. Louis that read the book, you'll get familiar with the neighborhoods he talks about. The book Homecoming Dance is available on Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com and if you type in the name of the book, it actually pops up with Jim Miller as the author. You can purchase it there. I have a hardcover here. I bought the hardcovers. It's in soft cover. Actually, I love the hardcover version. You got one there too.
I do too.
And I love the hardcover version. A lot of my employees have the book now. They're going to read it and move on there. So again, please look for Jim's books on Amazon. And thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name's Gary Fortney. We have Jim Miller, Homecoming Dance, and Tony Igloo Piwowarcyzk. And thanks for listening. My name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Trend. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us at The Trend's website at www.trendmediallc.com, or you can email us at any time at thetrend@trendmediallc.com. We welcome everybody's comments, suggestions, or reviews. Don't forget to stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Trend Media Podcast, and join the conversation on Facebook by searching The Trend Podcast. Check out our Amazon page through the link on our website, where you'll find some of our recommended products. We'll be back next time with more true crime stories, insights on law enforcement trends, and current trends with our region and the people we serve. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay part of the trend.